So, you have your models base coated, but what about washes? Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. Right, time for another back to basics video, and in this one we're going to cover washes, effectively shading your models. So as always, this series is aimed for beginners, but I do hope there's something in there that's useful to you. So yeah, let's have a look at washing your miniatures. Okay, so let's have a look at washes. Now the washes have gone through different name changes over the years as the technology's advanced. So Games Workshop originally called their washes inks, and then they moved on to washes, and indeed now we are calling them shades. And I've got a selection of Games Workshop shades here. This, for example, is a Citadel shade, Reichland Flesh shade, which you could probably imagine is pretty good for shading flesh. And these for shades here are really useful, especially for starting up. Now we are going to have a look at doing some washes on that Space Marine that I've already primed in the last video, and to be fair, if you prime your model well and then you do a decent wash, you almost could call your model finished, certainly tabletop quality. Maybe just do a few highlights after that. So like I said previously, getting a good base coat down is very important. So the wash is effectively a very watered down paint. It's not actually used with water, it's used with, I suppose, a medium, a bit like the Laham medium that Games Workshop produce, and that actually is designed for making your own washes and glazes. So just putting a little bit of paint into that Laham medium effectively gives you a wash, and this wash here is very liquidy. So there's things to bear in mind when you're doing washes, and that's obviously the colour of the wash, and also the thickness of the wash. So if you were washing, let's say, red, you have a couple of options. You could wash it with a red wash, or you could use a different colour depending on the type of effect that you're after. Now, for example, you could use a black wash on that red, and that would just change the total colour of the red. So it is a bit of experimentation, but ideally, I suppose the best thing to do to start up with is use the same or similar coloured wash to the colour of paint that you're using. So if you're using purple, use a purple wash. If you're using orange, you use the orange wash. That's a good starting place, and then as you get used to the washes, you'll notice how washing the base coat with a different colour will actually change the colour of how they look. Now, what I suggest you do is probably just experiment, and that's what I've done in the past. I was given a Dreadball team, unpainted, and I decided to paint that Dreadball team totally with washes, and really got me experience with using washes. Now let me just show you what I mean. So I've got this guy here. This is one of the Vermin models. Now this was just primed white, and everything on here that you see is painted with a wash, with the exception of the blue, which I just went in, I just put little blue highlights on, but all these skin tones, all of that green is painted with washes. Now all I did is I went over with the wash over that base coat and then let it dry totally and see how it looked. Now, to be fair, the orange, like these orange shoulder pads here, have got about 4 different layers of wash just to build up the colour, because you'll notice that the colour, obviously, when you first put it on, it goes into the recesses, and then as you wash it, it will get thicker and thicker, etc. But I found that doing that really got me used to using washes and how they work. If you're putting washes on a certain area which maybe is quite flat, you have to be very careful that it doesn't pool. If you get a big pool of wash and then it dries, it tends to leave almost like a big bubble type area. And that's what I want to talk about later as we actually wash our model, about the different techniques on actually washing your models, because it's not all about just slapping on the wash. Okay, there is one other thing that I want to just show you what you can achieve with a wash. Just bringing in my avatar model. Now in particular what we're looking at here is the, if I can get it into the picture, there you go, the hair. Now that hair looked pretty effective. That was incredibly easy to paint and primarily using a wash. So what I did is I base coated that with Warlock Purple, quite a bright pink colour. I then dry brushed it with white. Now we're going to cover dry brushing in the next video, so keep an eye out for that one. But yeah, just dry brushed that white just to bring out some highlights. I then went in and I washed it with a purple wash, and that was it. The dry brushing over the pink gave me some natural highlighting, and then putting the wash on just dulled down the white a little so it wasn't too stark, and then went into the recesses and gave me some natural shadowing. So I've got a nice mixture of highlights and shadows and that pinky colour. Of course the pink turned to this sort of more darker colour with the wash going on there as well. So very, very simple but very, very effective, and that is the key thing with washes, I think, is that just don't be afraid to experiment and use them to your advantage, especially when you're learning, because washes are a good way to get some good effects very easily. Okay, so let's put that avatar aside. I've got my Space Marine here in the tub ready to wash. I'm just going to prepare to get this guy washed, and we'll have a look at some techniques. Okay, so I have the Imperial Fist here ready to wash. I've selected a slightly older brush because washes do tend to ruin the brush a little bit more than paint. So I'm going to start off with Agrath's Earthshade, which is like a muddy colour, and I'm going to use this for the leather. Now in this particular instance I'm going to be washing it all over the leather, so hopefully you can see that sort of technique in action. So we've got these sort of leather pouches here just on the back, so I'm going to grab some of this wash. Got to start off, just go down the recesses and then just pull that wash over the leather sections. Now we're not looking to put like too much on, but we obviously want it to cover. What we are looking to do is not have this wash pull as such into like a little puddle in any area. Now with the wash you can sort of move it about as it dries, but one thing to note is once it's sort of starting to dry, do not touch it because you will ruin the wash effect. So let's just do this side underneath. Just make sure it's not pulling anywhere, and then under his legs to that back section just in here. Okay, so that is the leather done. So I'm just going to wash the brush, let that dry, and we'll come back. Okay, so yeah, that's it's not fully dry, but it's starting to dry. Now the idea of doing this type of wash that we're doing on the leather is we're basically shading all of the recesses of that leather, and then in the next stages, which obviously we're going to make a video about, I'm going to be bringing back the original base coat colour slightly and then highlighting it up from there, leaving those recesses alone, so they'll be finished in terms of painting, but the rest of the leather where there is no recesses will be brought up into sort of a highlight, and that's something I want to cover later in the video when we're going to talk about just washing the recesses only, and why you would do that. But first I'm going to continue on washing the whole areas of some sections. So I'm going to start off with the silver next, and I'm going to go in with a Nuln Oil, a black wash. Now you have a few options with the Nuln Oil, which I've actually experimented with in the past, because the black wash tends to get quite dark very easily, especially if you put it on quite thick. So what you can do is you can add some of the Lahar medium that we discussed earlier into the black wash and make it a little bit thinner, and then maybe go in with 2 coats of thinner wash rather than 1 thicker coat, and that helps you control how much darkness is done with the actual wash itself. Now I'm not going to do that with this particular model, I'm just going to make sure I don't go in too thick, but it is an option if you're finding that a wash is going on just too thick and too dark. Don't be afraid to water it down slightly, and then do 2 coats. Of course, make sure it's totally dry before you do your second coat of wash. Right, so let's get some Nuln oil and give that a shake. You will need, of course, shake all of these before you use them. And going to go in with the same brush, and I'm going to add this black wash to all of these silver parts. So I'm going to start here with the skull, and again, I'm just not going on too thick. Just make sure it goes on and that it sort of starts to settle in the recesses. So I'm going to do that on all of this. I'll speed up the camera. Okay, I'm going to go in now. I'm doing a little bit more tricky areas, so I've just selected a slightly smaller brush. So I'm just going to go into these really difficult to get to sections. Okay, so that's all the silver done on that guy. I've also got things like the sword here to do. In actual fact, this blue sword here, I'm actually going to go over with a black wash rather than a blue wash, because I want that blue to be really dark. And so I'm going to go back to that slightly bigger brush, and I'm going to wash the whole of this sword. And that's where I'm talking about using different colours to change how you want something to look. So you could base coat, say for example gold, and you can have like all your gold areas base coated, and then maybe some of the gold you would wash with a sepia wash, maybe other areas maybe with the flesh wash, and that would actually change that colour of the gold a lot, and actually give you 2 different types of gold depending on the colour of the washes that you've done. So a lot of experimentation probably needed, but it's well worthwhile, because painting with washes really improves your look. Okay, so that is the sword done. So I'm just going to finish up with the black and the rest of the stuff. I've got a few individual guns and things here that I need to do. So I'll do that and then I'll come back. Okay, so I've washed everything with the black now on all of the models, and that's all drying. And that's one key thing really, if you're doing a wash in one colour and then there's something next to that wash that you need to wash in a different colour, you do need to wait for the first wash to dry, otherwise the 2 washes will sort of bleed into each other. In this instance I'm going to continue washing even though that's not dried yet, because I'm going to be washing areas that don't already have a wash on. So I'm going to go into the purity seals just here, and I'm going to wash those with a flesh shade, just to give them a little bit of shadowing basically. So let's get some flesh shade out. Slightly smaller brush because it's a pretty small area. Just make sure I'm in the camera. Alright, so get some flesh shade. I'm just going to go in and paint the little ribbons on here. So that's all done there. And also on this power fist we've got this sort of ribbon area which I've also painted in the same base coat, so let's just go over that. Just spreading it around. I don't want this particular wash to be too thick, certainly don't want it pulling anywhere. Okay, so that's that done. Lastly, I'm going to do the red, and I'm going to use exactly the same technique. I'm just going to wash the whole of the red on here. So let's just clean the brush and get the red out. Right, so I've got the red wash, and I'm just going to wash all of these red sections with this red wash. So I don't want to lose the red colour, but I do want to shadow all of those recesses. So if I'd wash this, say, with black or maybe a mud colour, obviously it would totally change the colour of that red. But I do actually want this to be quite red, so that's why I'm using the red wash. So I'm going to do that on all of the red sections. I've also got this area here to wash, so again I'm going to go in with this red wash. I'm going to go in quite thick here because I'm quite happy for this. Is obviously the blood and guts, so I'm quite happy for it to look however it's going to look. I'm going to go over the bone as well. So I'm going to highlight that bone up, but I still don't really mind if there's any blood. We've got loads of blood effects on that area anyway. So that is that. I'm just going to finish up with the other arms, and I shall be back. Okay, so that is all of those washes dried. Next I'm going to wash the gold, and in this instance I'm going to use a sepia wash. So you'll notice I'm using lots of different coloured washes for all the different parts, and that helps give you different sort of colour separations of everything. So if I'd gone in and I'd basically just say given everything a Athrax Earthshade wash, then the model would sort of start to look all the same. At least if you're doing different washes, you get sort of some different colorations and variations of shadows, etc. So yeah, there isn't too much gold on here, but there is gold somewhere. Where are we? On the bottom of the sword. So let's just get that painted or washed with this sepia wash. Okay, so that's that section. I'll just double check there's no other gold. I think there's a piece on here. And I think that is all the gold. Okay, so all we have left now is the yellow armour. And I'm saving the yellow armour for last because this is where we're going to do a different technique of washing. Now I'm going to wash the yellow with the sepia wash, sort of an ideal colour just to bring out that sort of yellow shadow. Now what I could do is I could just go straight in and I could just give this whole yellow armour here just a massive wash of the sepia. And that would work. It would definitely give me the shadows, but what it also would do would just change the colour of this base coat that we've got down. And in actual fact, when you've got like quite a large flat area and you wash it, the wash doesn't go anywhere. It needs a recess to go somewhere, so the wash will just lay on top of this flat area, and then what you'll have to do is you'll have to go back in with the base coat colour and just go back over the yellow, just leaving the recesses. Which is what we will do, like things like the leather, for example. Now that's going to be a lot of work. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit more time when washing this model, and we're going to put the wash only in the recesses of this model. And that will basically just leave the yellow alone. It will give you your shadows, and then you can go straight into highlighting the yellow. There's no need to go back in with that base coat and bring the base coat colours up. In the long run, it's going to save us a lot of time, even though it takes us a little bit more work at the washing stage. Now, because we're going to go into the recesses, I'm going to get my smaller brush once again. So this is, what is this? It's a Games Workshop XS Artificer Layer Colour brush. So here we go then. So I'm going to get some of this wash onto the edge of the brush, and then I'm going to go into the recesses, and I'm just going to lay this into the recesses. Now of course we're not all perfect, so we're not going to be able to necessarily do this without getting it a little bit messy, and if we do, then we can just get our recess, our base coat colour and then just cover up any little mistakes once it's all dry. But this is certainly going to be a lot easier than having to do the base coat colour on all of the plates. So I'm just going to go over all of the recesses with this colour, and I'll speed up the camera. Okay, I'm starting to get there now, this wash. There's one thing probably extra to say is obviously you do have the option to use more than one coloured wash on something. So you know, you could go in with a black wash first maybe, and then afterwards you could go in with a mud wash, and of course that's going to change the end result. So you know, don't be afraid again, you know, to experiment with things like that. Okay, I'm just going to carry on, not too far off this bit. Okay, so that is that guy washed in the recesses. Obviously I've still got to do the other yellow on some of the other areas. I'm just going to zoom in and give you a slightly closer look at this. Okay, so there you go. All the washes are done on that guy. And like I said right at the beginning, if you can get a decent base coat done and then do some nice washes on there, your model is basically tabletop ready as it is. And obviously this wash is still drying at the moment, but you can certainly see the effects of the wash on both, like the areas where you've got that red, for example, and the silver, and of course where we've just washed in the recesses of that yellow. Of course, we are going to do more work on this guy, so we're going to do some highlighting of various sorts, so loads more videos to come in this series. But I really hope you liked this particular video. I hope it was useful to you. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.